yesterday we were hearing the section where Giriraj Maharaj was describing his understanding and participation in the life membership program, since that was such a substantial part of building the Juhu temple. By the way, there resources came from other places besides Bombay. New York sent a substantial sum of money to Bombay for the Bombay temple. Understanding the importance of cultivating relationships with donors. When we enrolled life member number 1000 in Bombay, I decided to stop making new members and just concentrate on maintaining the ones we had. Though things did not work out exactly that way, I understood that the principle of care and cultivation was what was truly important. Always remember how Prabhupada welcomed and encouraged us, despite our coming from wretched conditions and being full of bad habits. He listened patiently to our trials and tribulations, sympathized with us, and appreciated us, and tactfully engaged us in the 6 exchanges of love. Now, I was in a position to help people in their spiritual lives, and they could contribute so much to the mission. I would remember my own fallen condition and try to please Srila Prabhupada by caring for our special friends in the same way he would have cared for them, the same way he cared for us. I felt that I had to be ready to give myself to the members, the way Prabhupada had said, to make one devotee, we must spend gallons of blood. Prabhupada gave strict instructions that the membership contributions should be deposited 50% in his book fund and 50% in his building fund, and not spent on maintenance. Thus, there would always be funds to print and supply more books and to build temples. Once I met a very intelligent gentleman in his home in the Juhu scheme, whatever that means. He had been with Gandhi in the freedom movement, and when I mentioned Prabhupada's 50-50 policy, he said it was brilliant, perfect. He mentioned some other party that had applied a similar 50-50 policy and gotten tremendous results. I felt gratified to hear that such a wise elder had appreciated Prabhupada's genius. Break. One of the activities that Srila Prabhupada emphasized most for Juhu was the distribution of prasad. In Bhagavad Gita 9:26, Lord Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam, etc. According to the Gita 3:13, if one eats food without first offering it to Krishna, one must suffer reactions, and if one eats food offered to Krishna, one is released from reactions, gives the verse. Soon after Prabhupada left Juhu, I wrote him, progress here has been encouraging. On Sunday, we began the prasad distribution program, and over 100 children and many poor adults partook. Daily, our friends bring 10 to 20 small bags of rice, etc., and besides, Dravida Prabhu and others are collecting larger quantities from members. On the weekend, we go to nearby apartments to collect the weekly bhiksha, alms. Prabhupada replied, quote, the prasadam distribution item is very, very important, and it is so much pleasing to me that in the beginning so many children are coming and taking prasadam, and the supply of rice has come automatically. Please continue this program rigidly. By prasadam distribution, you will do service to the Lord, and the public will be pleased upon you as well. Gradually increase the number of guests, and don't deny anyone. Continue in this way. Whatever is there, distribute equally. It may not be very sumptuous, but no one should be denied equal portion. Anyone is open to take our prasad free. Unquote. And in his next message, he again stressed the program's importance. This food distribution program is to be done very, very nicely, as I've already written in my last letter. Generally, people make a plan that why are there so many hungry and naked? So we invite all hungry and naked people to come to us. And we will give them food and clothing and Krishna consciousness as well. This will attract the general public, and there will never be any shortage of foodstuffs, so continue regularly. In Bombay, there are many gorgeous persons who like food distribution programs, and actually our temple should be the via media for feeding the poor with food and spiritual knowledge. Our Bombay program should be based on giving Krishna consciousness through the English medium and distribution of prasad without any discrimination. This will enhance our prestige and will accelerate our spiritual life as well. The temple program of Arti, Kirtan, Bhoga offerings, discourses, etc. should continue. There should be no neglect of that program. So far as your hired Brahmin cook, since we have our prasadam distribution program, this may be necessary, but he must be clean, no smoking, and he must wear kunti, neck beads. As far as possible, he must follow our principles. When Jagat Purush came through Juhu on his way to Mayapur to help with the construction and saw the situation, he asked me why we had hired a cook. When I told him that we do not have enough devotees willing to do the service, he replied, if you like, I could stay for a month or two and learn how to cook in this situation. And once I do that, I could try to encourage some other devotees to come in to help. So, for about 2 weeks, Jagat Purush was trained in his words by this person, who had a very sweet personality but didn't have the standard of cleanliness that Srila Prabhupada insisted upon in cooking for the deities, and it was quite a grueling schedule. We would come into the kitchen at about 7 in the morning and wind up things at about 10:30 at night. We were cooking 7 different offerings a day for the deities, with 1 extra offering for prasad distribution. After a couple of weeks, I felt I could handle that service, and Subal Prabhu, a devotee who was mostly confined to a wheelchair, assisted, especially in rolling chapatis. From that time onward, from what I thought would be maybe a month or two, I was in the kitchen. It was very austere service. Not only were the conditions austere, but the heat. I arrived in April, and April, May, and the beginning of June marked the hottest time of the year, just before the monsoons. It could be 120 degrees outside, and you can imagine inside the chatai hut, where we had the pilot stove and the open fire for the chapatis. It was unbelievably hot. Paragraph. And yet, within the external agony, there was internal ecstasy. Once Jagat Purush described the heat was so incredibly intense, it was unbearable. I didn't know what to do. There were no fans. There was no place to get out of the heat. I had been in the kitchen and had just finished the noon Raj Bhog offering, so it was the height of the day. It was unbelievable. When I came out of the 10-foot by 10-foot cooking area After cleaning up, dripping with sweat, I sat down in the main area of the hut and was trying to chant my rounds. I was probably nodding off. I was so exhausted, and I was lamenting because I was suffering, and then suddenly I admonished myself, "What's wrong with you feeling sorry for yourself? You are thinking just about yourself. You should think about the little picture of the deities here in the hut." I told myself, "Don't worry about yourself. Think about their comfort. They are also here." So, with that thought, I picked up a peacock fan, or maybe a bamboo fan, some kind of fan, something I found, and I was fanning this picture of Radha Rasavihari and thought there was no breeze. Within a few minutes, I experienced this unbelievable coolness, this wonderful, wonderful coolness come over me. I wasn't hot anymore. The temperature had not changed. Nothing had changed. Just my consciousness. By Srila Prabhupada's mercy. As it turned out, Jagat Purush, who thought he would stay in Juhu for only 1 or 2 months before going to Mayapur, remained for 10 years. As eager as Prabhupada was for us to do prasad distribution, he also wanted us to do it in the right way, with the proper understanding. In my next letter to him, I presented some mistaken ideas. Quote, "The kirtan, food distribution, and English medium school programs are going on. There are not so many poor people in Juhu, so I suggested that we could build a bigger clientele if we distributed daily, and now we are feeding around 200 people daily, but not more. Otherwise, we can try an ad campaign for free prasad on the weekends and take food into poor areas." Prabhupada immediately clarified, "So far as prasad distribution, it is not a question of rich or poor. That will be karma kanda. Our program, therefore, is that we offer prasad to everyone. Make our temple so nice that everyone who comes is offered some prasad. Not that we are after poor men. It is nice that we are feeding 200 daily, but gradually try to increase. Do not advertise. We shall be self-advertising. And do not go to the poor areas. This is not our philosophy. Our philosophy is prasad distribution without discrimination of rich or poor." He wanted us to collect and distribute profusely, but he did not want any prasad wasted. "Waste not, want not," he sometimes quoted. He wrote to Mahamsa, "If you continue this prasad distribution and keep yourselves as good Vaishnavas, you will be overflooded with foodstuffs. One thing, don't prepare excess. You must have some idea in advance. We do not spoil anything. Better to give to poor men or to animals. Suppose I give you something and you throw it away. I will not be very pleased. So if God gives us our daily bread and we throw it away, that is not very pleasing to him." Dravida was tireless in going out and collecting grains and other ingredients for prasad distribution. He would go out after breakfast, sometimes even before, and return late in the afternoon. After some time, we made Raghunath, who by then had been initiated as Lokanath, his assistant. Lokanath would accompany him to the grain and spice market and translate for him, and sometimes Dravida would send him door to door. Quote, "Dravida Prabhu took me downtown to the Bombay grain market to get dal and other ingredients donated," Lokanath later remembered. There was one important ingredient they didn't sell in the markets, for which we had to go door to door: rice. Somehow, there was a shortage of rice in India at the time, and it was not available in the open market. It was being rationed for families, a few kilos at a time. So the only way was for us to get by doing madhukari, begging little from each home, and that became my service. Uh, he explains what madhukari means. I took a shoulder bag and went knocking on doors and ringing bells at all the houses and apartments in the Juhu area. Madhukari means that at some places you will be honored and dishonored in others. At some houses, they opened the door and I could make my appeal. But at some houses, they would just look through the little hole in the door and I'd have to shout out who I was and what was my business. Sometimes they gave a half, gave a quarter, half, or even a full kilo of rice. Other times they would slam the door in my face as soon as they saw I was a sadhu begging. Sometimes I had the opportunity to preach and invite them to the temple for kirtan or prasad, and even to sell a few of the small books I brought with me. A few times they set their dog on me, or they called their chokidar to get rid of me. If it were not for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure, I never would have done such a thing. It was a traditional, glorious, and purifying experience for me in my new status. Beggar in Bombay. Prabhupada wrote, Mahamsa, you may give Dravida as much help as he may require to canvass big men in Bombay for collecting the foodstuffs. It is very important that important men in Bombay cooperate with us in this prasad distribution, and they will always be very glad to give for our worthy cause. I express my appreciation of Dravida to Prabhupada in a letter. Dravida Prabhu has matured very greatly by taking big jobs as temple commander and in charge of prasad distribution. Even life members attend regularly. And in my letter I wrote, I have given 2 men to help Dravida Prabhu in the food distribution program as Doug and George alternate, one going out with Dravida for collecting foodstuffs and the other, Prabhu, remaining to help in the kitchen and oversee the actual distribution to the people. After a brief slump, the attendance for noon prasadam is again up to 50-60 daily. Jagat Purush is the head cook. Unquote. 3 weeks later, Doug was initiated as Dhumrakesh, and George was initiated as Gokula Chandra. Prabhupada replied, so far as foodstuffs, you should collect profusely. If you collect more, distribute more. And if you collect less, distribute less. But only distribute what you have collected. If there is no food, do not contribute our own funds for this purpose. Try to collect more. A Christian neighbor, Anita, who later joined our staff, was fortunate recipient of prasad. Actually, she recalled, we used to come here for prasad. They used to have prasad distribution, and we were staying in this village, and this used to be our way to the Juhu beach, on our way to the Juhu beach. Then, whenever they used to be distributing the chira, or flat rice, or suji, halava, we used to come and take. Once, she added, I had a glance of Srila Prabhupada. Brahmananda recounted, one evening Prabhupada was giving out prasad to all these kids. I said, oh, Prabhupada, let me do it. And I went to take the plate from him. Prabhupada looked at me and said, I will do it. He was actually giving mercy. That was his mission. This is our program, to worship Krishna and take Krishna prasad. In New York in 1966, it was an apple, a cut apple. And here it was just some fruit and halava. But this was Prabhupada's program. Very simple, but very deep. And Prabhupada gave it his full attention. He wasn't doing it in an offhand, quick way. He was very deliberate. Vishaka added, Prabhupada pointed out in his talks that even well-to-do people will come to get this prasad. They didn't need it. They weren't in need of food, but they valued it as something spiritual, something that could help them in their spiritual life. And this, Prabhupada said, was the purpose of prasad. It's not just an altruistic activity that we give prasadam to poor people or destitute people. We can do that. But prasadam is for everyone because spiritually we are all poor. We're all destitute. We need this mercy from Krishna. And Prabhupada was generous about it. The children would sometimes come 2 or even 3 times, and Prabhupada would smile and wag his finger at them, but he would give them again and again. As Srimati Warrior, pretty close. Remembered, in the temporary temple, after his lecture, Prabhupada used to give prasada. He'd give it once, and I would stand there, and he would motion, go away. And I would still stand with my hand, I want more. We, like everyone, Prabhupada explained on a morning walk, we do not reject anyone. A dog cannot understand the philosophy. Therefore, we call him and give him some prasad. Therefore, prasad distribution is one of our programs for everyone. Yes, we are not neglectful because he is dog, therefore he should be neglected. No, he should be given. In our glossy brochure, we advertise prasad distribution as part of the Juhu project. Quote, there is this specific statement in the Padma Purana, quote, a person who honors prasadam and regularly eats it, not exactly in front of the Murti, along with Charnamrita, immediately can achieve the results of pious activities which are obtained through 10,000 performances of sacrificial rites. Quote, whoever comes to the Hare Krishna land, whether curious, distressed, or in need of money or wise, one and all are invited to sing, dance, and feast on sumptuous prasadam. This process of Krishna consciousness is so sublime that just by partaking of prasadam, it is possible to make advancement in spiritual life. Our massive prasadam distribution programs are being continued regularly for any hungry living entities. In this way, thousands of people, regardless of their position, are being joyously fed. Muslims, Christians, and Hindus, are rich and poor, are sitting side by side and accepting the remnants of foodstuff from the Lord. Paragraph. The whole material world is full of hungry living entities. The hunger is not for good food, shelter, defense, or sense gratification. The hunger is for spiritual atmosphere. The foolish leaders cannot see even the people who are most sumptuously, materially satisfied are still hungry. And what is that poverty? This hunger is actually for spiritual food, spiritual shelter, spiritual defense, and spiritual sense gratification. Such things can be obtained in the association of the Supreme Spirit, Lord Sri Krishna, unquote. Bhagavatam Purport 1.12.6. That's part of their glossy, is quoting Prabhupada from Bhagavatam. Paragraph, break. After appointing me temple president of the Juhu project, Srila Prabhupada was also, while contending with many other formidable challenges, faced with the task of training me on the job to be a manager, even though it wasn't really my nature. For me, dealing with so many devotees was a challenge. Many were senior to me. Many were more materially qualified than I. Many were new to me and to India, and many had natures, backgrounds, conceptions, and moods that were much different from mine. And being as inexperienced and unqualified as I was unable to engage and satisfy the devotees as Prabhupada would have wanted. Paragraph. And so, within a month of his leaving Bombay, Prabhupada was endeavoring by letter to train me to actually lead and manage, to mold me into a more useful instrument in his and Krishna's hands. He sometimes said that the first duty of the leader or manager or government was to see that everyone was engaged. Parentheses, Narayan being one example. 3 days after his directions to me about the gardening, Prabhupada wrote again, chiding me and instructing me how to manage and engage the devotees. And after explaining my duty as a leader, he also delineated the followers' duties. He knew our natures, and he was simultaneously engaging and training us all. Quote, I have received reports from Mahamsa and Chaivana, he wrote, and it appears they're doing nicely. Some of the men, however, are complaining they have no sufficient engagement. 2 girls have already left Bombay, and their complaint was they had no sufficient engagement. Similarly, I have received letters from Puranjana, Vardhana, and Atmaram, and either they are not willing to work according to direction, or otherwise, how do they complain there is no sufficient engagement? I think there is more than sufficient engagement for everyone. We've got so much to do. We have to deal with so many men with different personalities. So kindly utilize their energies and at the same time keep them satisfied. That is leadership. If one man is appointed as leader, all men must follow him and be obedient. Quote, obedience is the first law of discipline, unquote. They are pointing out irregularities, but they themselves are not doing their duty. So they are pointing out the irregularities in others. They came to serve. Now they don't want to serve. So there's some excuse. Oh, irregularity. Let me go away. The workers should not suggest irregularities. Unquote. Above all, he reminded me and all of us of our greater mission, our higher responsibility to reclaim the fallen souls on behalf of Krishna. So, actually, we have taken a very responsible task on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He wrote, at the present moment, to speak the truth, the whole population of the whole world are demons and animals. Prabhupada's so heavy. It may be very strong aspersion on the people of the world, but this is the fact. But still, because they're part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, so originally they were pure, and therefore it is the mission of Krishna to get back his parts and parcels to home, exactly like a father likes to get back his son at home because the son has gone out of home for false happiness. But the people are so mad. They're talking so many nonsense things, nonsense philosophy, nonsense science, and our task is to meet all of them at the same time pacify them in their lunatic condition. So I'm sure you are a very good soul to act on behalf of Krishna and do it nicely. Krishna will give you the proper intelligence. He is sitting in your heart. Simply, he wants to see us working sincerely. Still, I was affected by all the criticism from the other devotees, and most of all from Prabhupada himself. And Prabhupada, understanding my heart, in the next letter explained his service to me in such a way that I could appreciate his criticism, which was clearly meant for my benefit. Actually, he wrote, it is the duty of the spiritual master to find fault in his students so that they may make progress, not that he should always be praising them. So if you find some criticism, kindly accept it in that spirit. I'm only interested in that you, along with all my other students, should become Krishna conscious. His words and sincere desire acted upon my heart and influenced me to improve my efforts, and I reported to him about some of the progress I or we had made. In the next letter, he expressed his appreciation for my efforts and reinforced his earlier statements about management, encouraging me to continue in the same spirit. Quote, I am glad to hear your explanation how the men are being engaged there in Bombay. That will be the test of your management, how well the men are satisfied by their engagements. I am very glad to hear that Narnarayan is doing so much work and that Paranjana has decided to remain there. He has decided rightly. Paranjana is another character. Paranjana is like a major detractor personality. Major. Mega major. Seeing things from the perspective of Shastra and reminding us of our highest goals and the means to attain them through parampara. In his next letter, he wrote, yes, by Krishna's grace, we have a very responsible task before us, so combinedly we should do it nicely so that everything goes on systematically. Rupa Goswami says that the things are enthusiasm, patience, conviction, acting exactly to the order of the Shastra and Guru, and always keeping oneself in the society of devotees. And this makes our devotional service successful. So, our serious students should follow Rupa Goswami's advice. Break, a whole new topic. One day in early May, Mr. Nair came in his car to take me to meet our solicitor, K.M. Dewanji. He was in the back seat on the right. I ended up in the middle, and he had arranged for a woman to sit next to me on my left. I didn't really want to sit next to a woman, but I was so intimidated by the whole situation. I knew that Miss Nair was a big man in Bombay, as well as the owner of the land, that I just went along with it. Soon after I got in, however, the woman put her hand on my leg, then my upper leg, making her way higher. I didn't know what was going on, but I was 24 years old and my mind and senses were in a tizzy. I thought I might just give in, but then I considered that when news of the incident got out, our position as a movement would be weakened and Srila Prabhupada's mission would be compromised. I thought, I can't hurt Prabhupada like this. So even though for myself I was ready to throw caution to the wind, for the sake of Srila Prabhupada I couldn't. Then I realized how powerful Prabhupada's mercy was, that I actually loved him more than I loved myself because I was ready to do something that would hurt me personally, but wasn't prepared to do something that would hurt him. Srila Prabhupada invested so much trust and love in us, his younger disciples, and gave us so much responsibility that we wanted to rise to the occasion and not disappoint him. Later I found out that the woman was a well-known prostitute in Juhu, and therefore I was careful to stay away from her, though she sometimes came to Juhu land looking for me. Ooh, Mr. Nair. At the solicitor's office, I was surprised to see how friendly Mr. Nair and Diwanji were with each other. After all, I was Dewanji's client, not Nair. Then Dewanji advised me to pay more money to Nair, which at that stage was not required, and timid or simple as I was, I paid an additional 7,500 rupees. When I informed Srila Prabhupada about the payment, he wrote, "What is the 7,500 rupees paid to Mr. Nair? On what account that is paid?" Answer: the 7,500 rupees paid to Mr. Nair is on the account of final payment for the property, I replied. Mr. Dewanji said, "When you are paying lakhs, what is that?" When I mentioned I actually did not have to pay until the conveyance. The combination of Dewanji's friendliness with Nair and his cavalier attitude towards our unnecessarily paying Nair another 7,500, a significant amount for us, should have alerted me to the fact that they were in cahoots. But I was too intimidated by the situation to formulate, what to speak of express, that idea. Okay, so the plot thickens. One of the conditions for the purchase of the land was that we obtained permission from the charity commissioner. As stated in clause 2 of the sale agreement, if the charity commissioner does not grant this said consent, then the agreement will stand terminated and the vendor shall return to the purchaser the earnest money without interest, cost, or any other compensation, loss, or damages. The first time I visited the charity commissioner's office, I was astonished by how little work was being done. The commissioner had a private chamber, and the rest of the staff sat at desks in a large open room, but I hardly saw anybody doing anything. Mainly the staff was sipping tea, reading the newspaper, or distracting themselves in other ways. I thought of Prabhupada's statement that when it came to material advancement, Indians were lazy, but when it came to spiritual advancement, they could make tremendous sacrifices and go to great lengths. I came to learn that the inefficiency was selective. If an office or officer wanted to help someone, they could be very efficient, but in our case, they showed no interest. Eventually, I came to suspect that Nair had his hand in the matter, and I began to see a pattern. In his agreement with a previous potential buyer of the same land we were now in the process of buying, S. Chaganlal and Brothers, Nair made a condition that the purchaser obtain permission from the Bombay municipality to subdivide the plot, and then had used his influence and perhaps money to make sure the permission was not granted. Then he had claimed that he had grounds to cancel the agreement, and after the cancellation he kept the purchaser's earnest money. In our case, he had embedded a condition in the agreement that we obtain permission from the charity commissioner, and even if the permission was not denied, if it was delayed past 6 months deadline for the execution of the agreement, which reads, quote, "The sale shall be completed within a period of 6 months from the date hereof, and or within 3 months from the date hereof, the time fixed for completion of sale is, as sanctioned above, shall be the essence of the contract," unquote. He could say that we failed to meet the terms of the agreement in time, cancel the agreement, and keep our money. But although that may have been his plan, he still faced the obstacle of removing us and the deities from the property. While living on the rooftop of one of the buildings on the land, Vishaka, sitting on a small piece of wood, wrote an article entitled Prabhupada's India's National Hero for the Hare Krishna Monthly, a publication I had started and which I usually edited and sent to Srila Prabhupada. I am very grateful to you for your kind words about me, he replied, but I do not think I have done anything. But I am only delivering the best message as it is. Actually, anyone who is sincere devotee of Krishna and who is rendering service by preaching his message is to be considered a hero. So you are all heroes of your country and humanity. Hero means someone whom others want to follow as example of the best type of person. So you all become like that, perfect examples of Krishna consciousness, heroes and heroines, and preach the message exactly as I have taught it to you, very seriously and being fully convinced, and others will automatically come forward and join us. We shall be like one great army of heroes for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. On May 24, the K Ward of the Municipal Corporation of Greater Bombay sent us two show cause notices, one for the hut and one for the temple, calling upon us to show cause or give reasons why those structures should not be removed. Our architect, Motilal Khanna, in his letter dated May 29, that's 5 days later, asked the municipal corporation to regularize the structures, and on June 12, the temple structure was granted a year's permission, which could be renewed. Paragraph. On June 5, I wrote Prabhupada, I received a letter from Shyamasundar Prabhu dated May 14, asking about GBC, and I replied to him directly in a letter May 25 that I'm pleased to accept that post. Prabhupada wrote to Jayapataka in Mayapur, I have appointed Giriraj to be the GBC Zonal Secretary for India Zone, and I'm sure that he meets your requirements of being equipoised and considerate of all the needs of the branches under his control of jurisdiction. Simply all you leaders there in India must cooperate with him nicely and give him confidence and advice how to manage the things in the best manner. So I suggest you address your idea for managing to Giriraj and cooperatively make arrangements. Bombay should be the headquarters for India. You send all money there, and when you require, you take, and they should keep all accounts nicely. Whatever you need, they will supply. Ooh. Prabhupada wanted Bombay to function as the head office for India and for the finances to be managed from there. But being both the GBC for India and president of Bombay proved to be too much for me. And after a short time, I went back to focusing on Bombay. In Juhu, without Prabhupada's personal presence, without, quote, the whole responsibility on me, I struggled to deal with many of the devotees, some of whom were proficient in various ways and also quite strong-willed. Some of them could not relate to my style and were critical, speaking against me, and sometimes openly challenging and defying my authority, and I did not know what to do about the situation, how to function. Tension increased, and finally relationships and communication broke down. Harikesh proposed the ultimate solution. So we phoned Srila Prabhupada. I had never thought we could do such a thing, and I questioned whether we should. But Harikesh thought that the situation was serious. Prabhupada was the only one who could solve the problem and had to be informed. You are the temple president, he said. Srila Prabhupada has put you in charge, and the devotees must follow you. But what they are doing is wrong. You must inform Prabhupada immediately. But how? I asked. I had never approached Prabhupada except by letter or in person. You must phone him. That was another problem. We didn't have a telephone. You have to go to the homes of life members in Juhu scheme and explained that you have an urgent need to phone Srila Prabhupada until one of them agrees to let you use their phone. I had made many members in the Juhu scheme and had affectionate relationships with them. If I asked, they would probably help, but we almost never made overseas calls, and the idea of phoning Prabhupada was intimidating. I didn't feel I could do it on my own, so I asked Harikesh to accompany me, and he agreed. That evening, after several unsuccessful attempts at other homes, we were invited by Sri Daulatram G. Valya, one of the three Valya brothers who had been very supportive. He could tell from the urgency of my tone that the matter was important, and he let us use his phone to call Prabhupada in Los Angeles. International connections were unreliable in those days, and I was nervous and unsure what to say, but I got through to one of Prabhupada's secretaries, and with Harikesh by my side encouraging and prompting me, I explained the situation as well as I could, and the secretary promised to relay the message to Prabhupada. Prabhupada's response came in a letter, June 19. My dear Gargamuni, Mahamsa, Naranayan, and Giriraj, my dear boys, kindly accept my blessings, and I hope by Krishna's grace you are all doing well. This morning I received one telephone message that there is some misunderstanding between yourselves and Giriraj, who is in charge of the Bombay Center. I may inform you in this connection that what I'm doing to push on this great movement in the world is all with your cooperation. It is not possible for me to execute this great responsibility alone. Kindly, therefore, abide by the direction of the man in charge of the center. If there is lack of obedience, then there cannot be discipline, and without discipline, we cannot manage a huge world organization. I shall be returning by September next. Kindly, therefore, do not make any fracture during this period at least. And when I return, if you all don't like the man in charge, surely I shall replace him out of you. But for the time being, please do not make any rupture, and please obey by the direction of Giriraj Brahmachari. Same letter, paragraph. So far as Gargamuni is concerned, I have already given him permission to go to Ahmedabad and other places in Gujarat state. He is a sannyasi, and his main business is to travel and preach, as I am doing in this old age, so that will please me very much. Paragraph. So far as Narayan is concerned, he is engaged in gardening work, so please give him all facilities so he can make a good garden on all the vacant land on our property. Paragraph. Mahamsa and Chavana may act as by the decisions of Giriraj, so Chavana may transfer his building supervision work to somebody else according to Giriraj. I've heard the building work is not going on satisfactorily, but that is our main business there. So, if it is not being done nicely, the proper experienced man must be put in charge of the construction work. Final paragraph. So, in conclusion, it is my request that even you do not agree on some points, Giriraj is in charge, so please follow his direction, and that will please me. I'm very much anxious to see the progress at Bombay Center, and I want it to become the first class preaching center in the world. Please help me in this ambition. If we can manage successfully, we will be attractive to the whole of India. Our task is very heavy. Do not neglect by paltry disagreement. I hope Krishna will bless you to understand my heart and oblige. The day after he wrote me, Prabhupada sent a letter to Yadavar, with whom I worked closely. I am in due receipt of your letter from Bombay dated June 14, 72, and I've understood its contents today. I've received one telephone call from Giriraj, and he has informed me that there is some disagreement among you leaders there in Bombay Center. This is not at all pleasant situation for anyone. I'm entrusting this huge task to all of you for working together cooperatively for doing something wonderful. I can understand that you are responsible and cool headed along with the others. So you take the hand in reconciling all differences. Mild manner Yadobar to the rescue. Same letter. I have just now written to Gargamuni Mahangsa Narayan and Giriraj as follows. He recites the letter. You state in your letter that everything is going on nicely there in Bombay, and I suppose that in general things are all right, but this today's news disturbs me, and I've ordered that Gargamuni shall immediately leave Bombay for Gujarat tour, and that Narayan be given full assistance for extending the garden and all vacant areas of the property. Kindly assist me for seeing that these plans are carried out immediately, and that our main task, namely the construction work, shall not be neglected. This is a very important matter. And the following day, he wrote to me, please accept my blessings in due receipt of your letter of June 13. Really intense. And have appreciated its contents very well. I'm happy to hear that the men are engaged nicely, especially in the matter of distributing books. Take any number of books without paying any price and engage the whole amount for our building work there in Bombay. But the building work must be superb. Now I have sent you one letter yesterday, which I hope by now has cured the situation among you all leaders there in Bombay. Somehow or other, all of our tenants should be devotees, and we can give them concession rents, but they should be devotees. And at least in our colony, there should be no violations of our rules and regulations. Actually, make it a Hare Krishna land or a pilgrimage place for Vaishnavas and the Indian people in general. Paragraph. I am very much especially pleased that you have had such nice meeting with Sumati Morarji. She is our friend, our old friend, and benefactor for long years back, and always she has desired for us to live as her close neighbors. She used to tell me in Bombay 2 years back that she wanted we should build our temple somewhere nearby to her place. She also assisted Tamal Krishna and Shyam Sundar to find one house in Juhu for our headquarters several times. So you can mention this fact to her, that now we have fulfilled her desire and we are living in close proximity to her. So she should take advantage of Krishna's blessings, blessing her with such opportunity for serving the Lord by herself, building our Juhu temple. Encourage her to attend the meetings every day. And if you make the deity worship very, very opulent and gorgeous, she'll automatically be attracted to them. She has no children of her own, so why not she should take Radha and Krishna as her children? You can propose gradually and tactfully that she can alone build up a wonderful temple in our property, and we shall name it Sumati Temple or Sumati Hall. So encourage her in this way, and I'm very much gladdened that she is so much willing to help us. Now you apply yourself to the matter very diligently and think always of Krishna, and it will come out very auspiciously. It is a unique temple in the world. And if you show your wonderful abilities as American and European boys and girls to manage everything superbly, she will not hesitate to entrust you in every way. Therefore, there must always be goodwill and cooperation amongst yourselves for this huge task ahead. I always think that our Juhu place, and I want that it should be model for all the world to emulate and respect us as the perfect example of a Krishna conscious community. I mean, these are really so detailed. How did he do it? Prabhupada was so earnest in a desire to engage us and all others in devotional service to Lord Krishna, and so caring and loving that he inspired us at least to try to rise above our weaknesses and conditioned natures and work together cooperatively, exclusively for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, for the benefit of the world. We had no choice but to surrender. Previously, disciples would live with the Guru in the ashram, and the Guru would be there to guide them at all times. The life of the disciples with the spiritual master was simple, consisting mainly of studying the Vedic scriptures and collecting firewood. But Prabhupada envisioned such a huge undertaking for at least several hundred years. No one had attempted anything on such a grand scale. Prabhupada himself had said, I can never think of anything small. My plans are always big. That is my disease. Further, he had to guide us from so far. He was training us in the same spirit of surrender as gurus had imparted to disciples for thousands of years. Brahmachari Guru Kuli, Vasan, Danto, Gurur Hitam, etc. The student should practice completely controlling the senses. He should be submissive, and have an attitude of firm friendship for the spiritual master. With a great vow, the brahmachari should live at the Gurukul only for the benefit of the Guru. 7.12.1. Although externally the lives of Prabhupada's disciples were different from the lives of brahmacharis in the past, the basic principle remained the same. The brahmachari, he was a 25-year-old brahmachari, was to serve the spiritual master dasa vat, humbly, like a servant, and ni cha, submissively. He was to live only for his guru, not for any personal benefit. He remained sudridha sauridha, firmly fixed in friendship with him. Quote, again, the same chapter. The brahmachari should go out morning and evening and collect alms, and he should offer all that he collects to the spiritual master. You should eat only if ordered to take food by the spiritual master. Otherwise, if the spiritual master does not order, he may sometimes have to fast. By such unconditional surrender to the Guru, the brahmachari disciple would receive all spiritual benefits. Back to Mr. Nair. Mr. Nair adopted various strategies to drive us from the property. Our only accommodation was the Chatai hut. And Nair sometimes cut the electricity so the devotees had no lights. The fans we had recently purchased didn't work, and the mosquitoes were eating us alive. Sometimes he would also cut the water supply. He also hired a strongly built ruffian named Ramu, the coconut walla, who ostensibly was there to cut the coconuts from the 140 palm trees on the land, and he kept him in an outhouse at the rear of the property. Especially during the temple's evening programs, Ramu would position himself near the front of the property and brandish his machete, looking menacingly at our devotees, insulting women, and trying to intimidate and scare away people who might want to come for prasad or arti, talks, or other functions. Last section. Another of Nair's agents had printed a handbill ascribing scandalous behavior to the Hare Krishna, American Hare Krishna devotees, and was having it distributed at the nearby Ville-Parle train station. Mr. Nair's campaign of harassment had some effect. A few devotees left, and others wanted to, but about 30 devotees stayed to serve Srila Prabhupada and Sri Sri Radharasa Bihari, resisting the opposition and tolerating the hardships. That's it for this evening.